age?
My name is Walter Hugh Pederson, and I'm 78 years old.
Okay. So, tell me about your life. I want to hear all about your life from a young boy growing up in Quilcene, Washington, and you come from a long line of loggers, sounds like.
Yeah. All my dad and his brother were partners. But first of all, I got to tell you that I can remember when World War II was over, because I was born in 41, and I guess the war, it was 46, the war was over, near as I can remember. But in Quilcene, everybody had their lights on and was driving around honking the horn and yelling, the war's over, and the fire trucks were screaming, and it was something that really sunk in my mind.
Yeah.
And my dad was up on the barn putting shingles on the roof, and he said, the war is over. So anyway, then I don't really remember anything till I went to first grade, which is about a year after that. And I had Mrs. Eaton for a school teacher, and so did Mary Lou.
Yes.
And I remember some of the kids in the class, but I can't remember all of them, you know.
Yeah.
But that's the first part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Then I remember going to work with my dad, and I just loved the woods.
Yeah.
And he had a big old Diamond T logging truck that I don't know where he bought that, but I remember he had it for a long time. And it could have been the same one that my dad and his brother Harold Pederson had, and another guy named Dale Lauderette had P&L Logging, Pederson and Lauderette. And somehow along the line, Lauderette wanted to go to California and log redwoods, and they didn't want to go that far away. So they split off, and so it just ended up Harold Pederson and my dad, Walt Pederson. And Harold was the oldest. And Harold and my dad went to an after-war auction and bought a 1946 or 47 Diamond T truck. But it wasn't a logging truck, it was a 6x6 front-wheel drive. And so it was a long trip, and we stayed all night at my grandmother's place in Purdy. And then my dad and I headed up the canal with that truck. Well, top speed was 40 miles an hour.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and it seemed like it took forever, and it just had a cloth top on it and no side windows, so you had to be bundled up pretty good.
Wow.
And being a young boy, I had to go to the bathroom really bad, and we got as far as Lillywop, and somehow my dad knew Big Mabel, who had the tavern.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she let me go in the tavern and use the restroom. It was either that or I had to go on the ground. So anyway, I did that, and boy, I thought I was a big shot. Here I was, really young, and been to the tavern already.
Yeah, okay.
So then, finally we got the truck home, and they made it into a logging truck at first, but it was short wheelbase and only 40 miles an hour. So Harold was pretty much mechanical. I mean, I can remember him building a boat, installing the motor and feeler gauges. And so anyway, he got the truck lengthened out, and then they took the rear end out of the front, made covers for everything, took the axles out. So it wasn't front wheel drive anymore, but it was long enough that you could haul logs with it. Well, they hauled logs with it for a while, and then they got into the sawmill business, because if you didn't have a log with 80 board feet on it, they culled it. Well, with this portable sawmills, they had a portable sawmill, and Charlie Holman was a sawyer. And he drank a lot. A lot of the loggers drank heavily, but they always made it to work. It was not like these drug addicts. So in a way, I'm getting a little bit lost here. Anyway, they used the truck the rest of the winter, and summertime came, and Buck Mountain had a huge operation going in Quilcene at that time, and there was a guy named Al Edwards who was a body man for Buck Mountain. They had a body shop there. So he built the metal cab that's on there to this day, and still was no side windows. It never did have any side curtains or anything.
Wow.
So we could haul cants then from Quilcene. We was working on the Peacock Farm, which was Tex Lockridge had 200-300 acres there, and we had our sawmill, their sawmill, cutting cans.
Okay.
And I remember riding with my dad to South Point to get on the ferry, and going up what we called the garbage dump hill.
Yeah.
Top speed was 4 to 5 miles an hour. But we made up speed coming home,
Yeah.
because then we could go 50.
Mm-hmm.
And of course downhill, and it had air brakes. And anyway, I was giving it to the junk man, Ian Carter, and Paul Mahan said, no, I want to keep that history with that truck. So right now it's over in his front yard, far as I know.
Huh.
And that's pretty much the story of the 1946 Diamond T.
Isn't that something else? That's pretty neat, Wally. So tell me about when you got out of high school, what you started to do for work then.
Well, I worked way before I got out of high school. I started working when I was old enough to ride with my dad to work, and him and Harold were logging,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a big old cedar slabs and stuff left that nobody wanted.
Yeah.
And we didn't ever get an allowance. We had to make our own money. Mary Lou babysitted, and I didn't do any housework, so I made shake bowls.
Yeah.
And I kept doing that, and I tried out for sports, but I wasn't worth anything. And playing football, I could carry water to the guys, about all. So anyway, I just kept working and saving money. And when I was 16, I had $800
Mm-hmm.
saved up in the bank. Well, my dad wasn't much for going to the city, so I went with my Uncle Harold, and I got a car.
Wow.
And before I got the car that I had, I called up my dad and I said, I found the perfect car, 1950 Chevy 2-door business coupe, but it cost $800. He said, well, how are you going to drive it? I said, I don't know, I'll probably have to work. He said, well, you have to leave it set so you buy insurance, and you got to have extra money for gas, and you're still going to high school. So I bought a cheaper one, and it worked out swell because it was a 4-door fastback 1949
Okay.
Chevrolet. And so I was the only one in our sophomore class that had a car.
Oh wow.
So that's how that went, and I had a lot of fun with it. I always had a lot of girls riding around with me in it, and well, it was the only way they could get around, and we were stuck in Quilcene.
Yeah.
So that worked out pretty good for me.
So yeah, go ahead and tell me about when you
Well,
started your vocational school.
Yeah, I finished high school, had a pretty good time. Then I went to Bates Vocational School in Tacoma,
Uh-huh.
and that was really interesting because I studied diesel mechanics, and Virgil Pettit was my teacher. And he was a genius when it comes to mechanical things.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even need to have marks on any kind of a diesel engine to put it back in time.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how he figured it out, but he was that intelligent.
Wow.
So I learned as much as I could from him, and I really liked it. And but at that time, if I just was a mechanic, I couldn't make what maybe apprentice $2-3 an hour, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was a little bit money hungry from not having a lot of money, so I decided I was going to have my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, there was Buck Mountain, and I seen what they were doing. You know, they had all these people who was working for them. There was Carol Mercer and his father-in-law, who Buck Ray Buckman bought out the father-in-law, and then Ernie Dahlman, and I think that was it. I'm not sure, but they had 300 people in Quilcene working,
Okay.
and around the areas, and on different mountains, and
Wow.
it was a competition in which side would get the most logs. So I remember during elk season, somebody put in a phony, the elk are on Jupiter.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody shut down their logging but Buckman, I think it was. So Buckman, I'm not sure if this is correct, but somebody was a champion, won the bet on how many loads they could get in a day.
Because everybody split.
But it was good to have competition. Everybody worked really hard, you know. So it was just kind of a big joke for a while, but they did so much good. They started a fund, and the only time you can remember this, Mary Lou, is when we had a princess from Quilcene, and it was a Bloomfield girl.
Oh, Carolyn.
No, they're older one. One of the Bloomfield girls was the queen of the Rhododendron Parade.
Yeah.
And the way Buck Mountain did it is they had these crew buses, and whoever sold the most buttons got to be queen of the parade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they took tours up in the mountains, and hundreds and hundreds of people went on these tours. And the guys that drove the crummies just volunteered, you know, so it was all profit. Buck Mountain paid for the gas.
Wow.
And that was the last year they went by who sold the most tickets.
Really?
And that was Junior Bloomfield's sister.
Well, Carolyn was his wife. I don't know who.
Carolyn was a crow.
Yeah, yeah.
This was a Bloomfield.
Oh.
They hunted cougars because there were big bounties on cougars.
Yeah.
And I even ate some cougar meat. It tasted a lot like deer. You know, it was real mild. It was good tasting, but.
How many sides did Buck Mountain have?
Oh, they must have had 10 or 12 different sides, and then some little other subcontractor sides too. Like Kenny Harris had a jammer.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, people like that.
Yeah.
And the cold deck. And then they had these heel booms with about 400-foot line on them. Mm-hmm. And they would swing the tongs out over the deal and hook a log down there.
Yeah.
So what they did is the guys hated it because they gutted all the clear cut sections by about 300 feet. So when they rigged up, they were logging through dead ground.
They creamed out all the.
They creamed her, yeah. That's what they said about her. But anyway, the competition was wonderful for Buck Mountain.
Wow.
And Mercer, he just sat in the office and run the office and did the payroll, and Darlene Harris was Kenny Harris's wife, and she was a bookkeeper there. And then there was another older lady. What I do remember is going into that office and the whole thing filled with cigarette smoke because they all smoked cigarettes.
Ooh, wow.
It was horrible. Mercer was really good to me. He was good to a lot of the people, and I bought a lot. When Buck Mountain finally sold out, I bought a lot of the equipment stuff. I bought 2 dump trucks. I didn't even need 2 dump trucks, but he said, "You just take these trucks, put them in your name, and when you get some money, you can pay me whatever the amount was."
Wow.
And one of them had a V671 Jimmy in it, and so I used that for a long time. The other one was an old Mack, strictly for off highway, and I don't know what we did with that. Cut it for parts or something. But anyway, he was a wonderful man.
Wow.
And he helped a lot of people.
So did you start Pederson Log and Lumber when Buck Mountain went out of business?
No, I actually started working for my Harold and my dad, and by that time they were pretty much in the sawmill business.
Yeah.
And we were yarding with a D6 cat with an arch.
Yeah.
And then about that time, Garrett Skidders come into play. And they bought this little Tinker Toy Garrett thing out there. And it was really fast running around, but it only yarded about...
Peggy will get it in the other room. She'll get it in the other room.
It could only yard about 2 or 3 logs at a time. And then here come the D6 cat with about 15 logs in one time, a lot slower,
Yeah.
but, you know, because we were yarding kind of downhill at that time at Discovery Bay.
Yeah.
And then by noontime, the U-joints went out of the garret.
Ooh. Yeah.
So the cat just kept running and running, and we didn't think much of their skidder,
Yeah.
but I guess they used them for little pulpwood things and stuff, you know. But
Okay.
of course, it got better as time went on, but we never did go away from those. We had, my dad and Harold had 2 D6 cats,
Yeah.
and by that time we had 2 sawmills,
Okay.
and it was pretty good till the Japanese started buying logs, and that's about the time my dad and Harold retired.
Yeah.
And when I could sell logs for more than I could cut lumber, I just quit the sawmill business because they liked hemlock, and hemlock was real low valued for us. We got $35 a thousand for the hemlock cut into, you know, 6x6s and 8x8s delivered to Port Gamble. $35.
Wow.
So you can imagine what the stumpage was on that, about $5.
Wow.
So anyway, when hemlock got to $85, I thought I died and went to heaven. And I did make a lot of money them first few years till the real estate people got into the business. I knew everybody because I lived here my whole life, and a lot of the farmers and people didn't trust loggers. So I'd go in there and say, "You want to sell your place today?" "Sure, I'll sell it. How much you want?" "Well, I want 60,000. How about if I give you 50,000 cash?" And I did buy 50,000 cash, and there was 5 sisters involved, and it was an estate, and so I come up with 50,000 because I was 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and I sold the timber off the place for more than 50,000.
Oh wow.
But that was about the end of it. The real estate said, "Yeah, well, we got a logging job for you, but we bought a piece of property and we want you to come log it because we're going to sell the land." And that's when they kind of took over.
They figured that out.
Yeah. Sometimes I get jumping around from one story to another because I get flashbacks about what happened at that time. Yeah.
How long did Pederson Log and Lumber stay in business for?
How long was Dad and Harold in business? Quite a while.
Yeah, I think they were. I can remember.
Well,
they were still
doing it in '59.
Yeah, they were still doing it when I was teaching school, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
61, I think I started doing it on my own.
Okay. And you did it from 61 until
I retired, kind of. I got real big, because sometimes you get greedy, and you think if you have one side with so many guys working, you're going to make this, but if you have 5 sides, you're going to make 5 times. Well, that's not true. So, but that's what happened to me. I had 60 people working, and that didn't work out. My friend Freddie Plinus only had himself and his crew, and he probably made way more money than I did with 60 people working.
Wow.
Because everybody kind of get you free gas, and
right.
They didn't actually steal anything from me that I know of, but there was just too many. And when they went to buy parts with your money, they bought 2 of everything and then lost the one they bought.
Yeah. Okay.
And you've been in business, you kind of know how it works.
Yeah,
but
I know how that goes.
after that, then I had an auction and sold everything, paid the bank off what I owed them for the lumber, and it was just about broke. I had a little bit of money left,
Yeah.
but I didn't owe anybody. So then my cousin Dick Pederson, which was Harold's son, he helped me, and we started working together by ourselves. And we worked for Wyckoff, and I had one of the D6 cats, the one I recently just sold, and I had a Garrett a John Deere 740 skidder.
Yeah.
And we'd take up piling for Wyckoff
yeah.
Company. So that's when I got started, and I did make some money doing that.
Okay.
But I had to work myself and be there every day, which was what I should have done in the first place.
And you started doing that work for Wyckoff after you sold that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes I did.
So what year was that you sold off everything and basically retired from the big time logging.
Peggy would know. Peggy, can you come here, please?
Maybe you should have him turn it off for a minute.
Oh, it's all right if it keeps.
Anyway, I can't remember the exact years, but my wife will remember because she did the books and helped us with what we could do, and
That would have been about late 90s or so,
yeah,
right? 'Cause
something like that. 90s.
Wasn't that you had an Edco yarder that?
Oh yeah, I did have an Edco yarder.
That
Yeah. Then what we did actually get a little bit bigger. Dickie helped me. He did the contract cutting and falling when we had this tower, which I sold to Mike Hanley,
Yeah.
and it really helps when you remind me of stuff like this. Anyway, we used that, and there was Netaloo bought, I think, was it 5,000 acres from the Chinese? She bought it. She was a Chinese representative, and Scott Paper sold the land. And then every logger in the world was up there logging, but they would only take the easy stuff because they had to get a lot of loads per day. So then they sold out. So I went to her and I said, they left a little corner up there in the deal. Would you take $5,000 for it? Well, she gladly took the 5,000, and I got stumpies for about $10 a thousand, and was sold the logs for 900.
Wow.
I didn't have to get much production. I needed margins, all I needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that really helped too, and then we got some more equipment, and
Yeah.
and
Well, you had a Medill.
oh yeah, that was when I was working for Seaboard up on the Jolly Green Giant sale, and Bob McLaughlin was a representative from Seaboard, and he made me log all the tough jobs first, all the crappy jobs, and at first we were going broke, and we met with Don Dyson, who is the head of McLaughlin. I said, Don, I'm going to have to give this equipment back because I can't make it at $75 a thousand. I need 150 to even break even.
Yeah.
And it's because we was logging junk, and it was only 3,000 feet per load.
Wow.
So Don gave me the $150, and we kept at it, and I finished all the hard, tough, slow jobs, and we made a little bit of money. But then there came Tunnel Creek, and Tunnel Creek was an old growth thinning, and the loads went from 3,000 feet per load to 6,000 feet per load.
Holy cats.
And from getting 3 loads a day, we were getting 6 loads a day. And McLaughlin was scuffing his feet and worried about how much money I was making, because I was making more than he was. So that really helped me a lot. And and I kept that Medill until I had the auction, and that was one of the things that was sold in the auction of many of the other ones. So
and you had Ken Ackerman running that
Medill, right? Yeah, Kenny was a good man. He still is. And I think he'd rather be logging today than what he's doing, riding a motorcycle to Seattle and running a big crane.
Yeah.
And Ken, I told Ken, I said, Ken, you have enough money, you're making over $100,000 a year, buy yourself a commuter car. He said, Wally, I can't, because I can get on the ferry any time with this motorcycle. But he did hit a deer one morning and get banged up a little, but he's still doing it as far as I know. But instead of buying junk like we used to, he's got brand new equipment now. Got a brand new little mini excavator. I don't know what all he's got, but he liked logging and farming. It's in his blood.
So who was, out of all the employees that you had working for you, because you had a machine shop and...
Yeah, during that time. And I have to say one little thing about Ken. He learned a lot from his dad, Alvin.
Yeah.
And Alvin was unbelievable. I wanted an old car, so I bought a 1919 Dodge that my cousin Dickie found in Shelton for me. And I brought that up to the shop, and Alvin remembered how it all worked. And of all things, it was a 12-volt system. The generator was also the starter. So you backfed the power to the generator, whirled the motor over, it had a 4-cylinder in it, and that started the engine. Well, he actually got that thing running for me. It would start up and would drive around the shop, but it sat around for years and years. And I finally realized that Wally can't ever finish this project.
Mm-hmm.
I sold it to a guy, and it went back to New York City, or somewhere in New York.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I think it cost more to ship it than I got for it, but I didn't lose any money on it.
Isn't that something else?
Yeah, I don't know if the guy ever got it going or not, but and it had the craziest thing on it. It had a deal where you pour motor oil into this thing, and when you wanted to oil the road, you pulled this lever, and it oiled the road. And Alvin swears up and down that it was used to run moonshine because it had bullet holes to this. When I shipped it, it still was full of bullet holes, something like, you know, Bonnie and Clyde would have, you know.
Wow, isn't that something?
Yeah, you're going down the road, and all of a sudden they blackened the whole road with oil, and a car chasing you slid off in the ditch.
Isn't that
But
something?
I swear to God, it had that. It
No
was
kidding.
funny, yeah.
A moonshiner car.
It was a moonshiner car. Alvin swears it was, you know, and I swear I didn't touch that because it said it'd make it really valuable. But
Wow.
you know, I didn't have time to make things really valuable.
Huh.
So that was just a little sidebar.
Isn't that something else? So
Yeah.
Wally, when you and Dickie started doing that work for Wyckoff, how long did you strike out just the two of you and do that for?
Probably 2 years.
Okay. And then you got into land development after that?
Yeah. Well, like I told you before, when I bought that land I kept all the land.
Yeah.
So I paid $50,000 for the land and actually got it back in the timber.
Okay.
And then I sold the land to some farmers because I didn't want it. I tried to do stuff with the county, but it's impossible in Jefferson County to make a trailer park for people could have 5 acres in a trailer house.
Right.
So that's another little sidebar. But anyway, so I sold it to 2 farmer kids for $400,000 cash.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they divided it into 2 pieces. But I still own 2 more pieces in behind there to this day. I have.
Yeah.
And one is like a 4-acre piece, and one's a 3-acre piece with a gravel pit on it.
Okay.
And
That's something else.
yeah,
And
I
then-
didn't really get to tell you much about Doug Reeves.
Yeah, talk about him.
Oh, Doug Reeves was a wonderful man, and he was a kid at first when he going to school. When I built the timber house, him and his older brother Alan picked up rocks and did the landscaping and stuff because his dad made him work, and he didn't seem to mind it. He worked, and then he loved our shop and he liked doing stuff over there. So when he got 16 or 17, he would help mechanics in the shop, which we had 7 people working in the shop when everything was rolling.
Wow.
We had a night shift because I had 6 of my own trucks.
Wow.
So anyway, then Doug, I talked to him about vocational school, and he went to vocational school.
Yeah.
And he come back and he worked a while, but Doug was more ambitious. He could see working for me wasn't what he could make on his own, so he bought a big welder truck and stuff and went out on his own, and everybody hired him. He couldn't get him at last. So then he could see that just doing work like that wasn't enough, so then he bought excavators and equipment, and up to the day he died, I think he had 6 or 7 excavators and cats and everything. He had so much stuff he couldn't keep the oil changed and everything.
Yeah.
And so did I at one time.
Wow. That's really something else. And then, so how long was it that Doug worked for you think?
Well, he worked for me from the time he was probably 13,
Okay.
and then he went to vocational school, and I think he was probably 22 or 23 when he started working for other people.
So he about 9 or 10 years or so.
Oh yeah, we had a
Wow.
wonderful relationship.
So, well, I'm kind of curious when, after you got done doing that work with Dickie for Wyckoff, and you did a little bit of the land developing, How long was it until you retired completely and got away from
Well,
doing that?
I started drawing my Social Security when I was 62,
Mm-hmm.
and I still had little things I could do,
Yeah.
you know, sell, but pretty much it's from 62.
Okay. And
I didn't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning after I was 62.
can't blame you for that. Out of all the people that worked for you, who stood out the most as being just a real character? That
Kenny Ackerman.
Kenny Ackerman. That's neat.
He loved what he was doing. I think if the logging hadn't shut down, he'd probably still be logging.
Yeah.
But it worked out way better for Kenny because Kenny had skills that, you know, there's not a lot of people can run a big, huge 100-ton crane or whatever they are, cable machine with a 130-foot boom on it, and drilled 4-foot holes for Paul Allen's. He told me he was had this Chinese or Japanese machine that drilled 4-foot diameter holes to fill with concrete for they're building the football training place there on Lake Washington.
Isn't that something else? Out of all the jobs you've done, because you worked for Crown Zellerbach.
Yeah.
Out of all those companies that you worked for, what was the most memorable mill or landowner that you had dealings with?
Well, I think probably Crown Zellerbach. Cecil Quackenbush, he's still alive yet. And we took a downhill piling logging job on Mount Walker. Steep, and there's no way to get up there, so you better make sure you had plenty of extra hay wire up there in case you pulled a tail hole.
Yeah.
And Kenny, we did okay on that job. And we figured out if you yard the piling, if you haven't cut the top off at 8 inches and you yard the piling from the top coming down backwards of what you would think, all we had to do is lift the top up a little bit and pull it down. The hardest part was stopping it when it got to the landing.
Yeah, okay.
And somehow Kenny figured out something, but it was quite a learning experience. But we did make money in the long run with them because they were a fair company.
Wow. And so that job that you did, is that across from where the Mount Walker State Shed is?
Yes, right across there.
Right against Fred Tusso's property?
Then they logged the rest of it, not Crown Zellerbach, but the other helicopter, the rest of it. They had a great big helicopter and one little guy sitting backwards, and the blades were, I think, 40 feet long each.
Mm-hmm.
And they had burned so much fuel, they had a tank truck sitting there, truck and trailer loaded tank. I don't know how much capacity, but it worked slick though. They had a hook on it. They dragged the timber down there, and then they just snapped the hook and back it went. I mean, it had a lot of turns per hour.
That was about 96 or 7 that they did that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And then
I went up there and watched them lots. I really liked seeing that.
Yeah, I was too young to be able to remember all that, unfortunately. I'm kind of curious, out of all the jobs that you've done out in the woods, because you've done just about all of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
What was the most fun for you?
Well, the most fun was seeing all my 6 trucks loaded up at night, work to the shop in the winter time, and the exhaust coming out and all of them going down. We had 6 trucks at the log dump, and all 6 were mine. Everybody else was behind us.
Really? So what?
That was fun, but I mean, it wasn't practical.
Were they all ex-Buck Mountain trucks?
No. Buck Mountain, I had all Peterbilts and 1 Kenworth.
Okay. Oh, very neat. So, did you have log
One
trucks?
of the Kenworths had a self-loader on it.
Okay. And did you have those trucks all the way from 61 until?
No. First trucks I had was a 52 Mack, and there was one that Dad and Harold had bought, and I think I paid $1,500 for it. But then I took it and got another old truck that had a Cummins engine in it, and I had a little bit of money by then, and then I put that Cummins in there, and it was an NRTO
Yeah.
400
Yeah.
and 20 horsepower. And I remember John Bolton bought a brand new Peterbilt. I think it was, yeah, it was a Peterbilt, and I could pass him. Kenny Ackerman, he was driving for Haldane Johnson, and he could outrun me on going downhill, but boy, I could just whiz by his old 318 going uphill. And I would, just to torment him, I would wait for him to come, and then I pull in behind him, and we were headed up the grade, and then I just whiz out around and go around. Boy, he was crabby. That was fun times. You know, we made our own fun.
Yeah. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So, well,
but the motor didn't last very long, you know, because I had pretty good knowledge after going to Bates of what needed to be done.
Right.
And they didn't really want to do it, but put the liners in the engine and reamed them out 4,000 or 5,000 before we even started it. It would just knock and pound and hammer when you first.
Wow.
Once it swelled up and they're smooth.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
And the same old Mack rear ends held up just fine. Never did have a rear end go out of it. Had plenty of them go out of the Peterbilt, so.
Isn't that
SQHDs are lightweight.
Is, you know, and thinking about everything that you've accomplished in your life, if you had some words of wisdom to impart on a young person that wants to go out and work in the woods or strike out on their own, what would you have to say to them?
Well, unless you get your own company going and things change, you can do well. But my son-in-law, for instance, he is an accountant, and he works for Expeditors International, and he can make $200,000 a year. So, you know, it's pretty hard to match the thing. You have to do it for fun. You have to be able to love doing it, and you're not going to get rich. He has nothing invested, but he pays a lot of income tax because there are people that don't pay income tax. And they got something called unearned income they get. And for instance, Peggy had to pay for her health care. We got about $800 a year. We called up and wanted to change to Obamacare, and it was $1,500. And her mama said, "That can't be right. My grandson gets it for $40 a month. Yeah, $40.
Yeah.
And she said that's why mine's $1,500.
Wow.
So that's how the economics just don't make sense in this.
Right. You're paying for the next person.
Yeah.
You should tell them about the time you took the engine out of the one logging truck and put it in the other one.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Oh, and then I got hooked. This is a sidebar.
Yeah.
I got hooked up with Maury Anderson,
Yeah.
and we cut, I think 4 years in a row, we took the tallest Christmas tree to Seattle.
No kidding.
Yeah, and the tree was so big, we had it all tied together as small as we could get it with ropes. And of course, this was in December, and some crazy guy, we had it ready to go, come and cut the top off at about 12 inches, or I don't know, maybe smaller than that, and called Red Cook. Need your help. He come down there and he made a clamp and put it around the tree. You couldn't even see it. It fitted in amongst the branches. And we hauled her to Seattle, and they took her.
Really?
Yeah, I had to take 2 days to get to Seattle. We had to leave in the dark with pilot cars and lights flashing on Sunday to get over to, then Sunday, then was it Monday morning, we were the first ones on the, well, when we come back, they said, "You knocked all the sprinklers loose from there." I said, "I don't think so. I don't know what happened." And nobody said anything when we went off the ferry.
No.
So we had to be more careful the next time because they had to replumb the piping was hanging down, see, and the limbs were going.
Okay.
And then when we got to where we're going over 4th Avenue, at the bank building, Chicago owned the bank. Somebody from Chicago owned this big bank. they cut a hole in the floor,
Really?
and there was a parking garage underneath. So they made this big big metal clamp at the bottom, dropped the tree down through the hole, drove shims wedges in the top hole, and that's what kept the tree up with no guy lines.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty ingenious, you know. We did that for 4 years till somebody bought out the bank, and then they didn't want to spend the money. And I think we got, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000 for
Really?
doing that. Yeah, maybe it was 10,000. Yeah.
Holy cats.
Yeah, so it was worth it for us, and it was a fun experience.
Oh, I bet.
Because normally Nick Ward drove that big truck that I had, the Peterbilt, but on a deal like that, I drove it because we was just doing it for fun.
Yeah. So now, where would you cut those trees down at?
Well, Maury Anderson owned a big farm, and they were white firs, what they were, and it was down next to the river, and right across from where our shop is, down below there on that big huge flat.
Okay.
I can't remember, it had a name for it, but I don't remember what it was.
It's kind of down below the Bancrofts.
Yes,
that
yes,
valley
yeah,
down
yeah.
there.
Big huge field with lone trees standing there.
Really?
Yeah.
And then, do you remember how long it's been ago that Maury Anderson passed? That's been 8 or 10 years, right?
Well, time goes faster. I didn't want to comment on that because once Dick Borden told me he passed away, and he hadn't passed away, and I was going around spreading the rumors that he passed away, so I don't remember the exact year. Yeah, it must be by now, because his estate has been all sold off or whatever they did with it. So
Yeah.
you're probably right, about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And Maury Anderson was an old-time guy who was still in them days prejudiced.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I should tell this or not. You can edit it out if you want to, but his daughter married a colored guy,
Uh-huh.
and he disowned her.
Really?
That's a true story, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, and he had a biological granddaughter,
Mm-hmm.
and anyway, none of the grandkids ever got a dime of his estate.
Really?
Yeah. Don't quote me on this, but this
Right.
is what little bit I know, and I probably, times are so different, and people in Quilcene weren't prejudiced. We had Indian kids going to school, and they were the same as all of us, and
Right.
I don't remember any prejudice stuff. Do you, Mary Lou?
Yeah.
No,
No, I don't. There weren't any black kids.
No, there weren't any black kids, but I had, Poe and
Yeah.
a lot-
Well, yeah.
Junior and all, they were Indians.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
and Ray Kawamoto was
And he was
Japanese.
Japanese, I forgot
Yeah.
about him. He had the big farm out as you go
Okay.
to.
Did and what did H.J. Carroll have to do with Buck Mountain?
Well, he was a very intelligent guy, Carroll. He was a real estate business. Or are you talking about Carroll Mercer?
I was thinking H.J. Carroll because I thought.
He was a real estate man.
Okay. I thought for some reason H.J. Carroll had something to do with Buck Mountain.
I don't think Carroll Mercer was.
Okay.
But H.J. Carroll, he said, Wally, I seen a lot of guys overspend on buying land. But he said in the long run, 10 years, they still doubled their money.
Hmm.
And I took that to heart.
Wow.
So no matter if you got in a bidding war, if you got it and you had time, you always made out on land deals.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure he died multi-millionaire.
Isn't that something else?
Yeah, that was the real estate man in Port Townsend. I went with him when, this is another sidebar thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. H. Kenneth Carter, our dentist,
Yes.
and H.J. Carroll
Mm-hmm.
and myself, we chartered a plane and went over to Silverdale.
Really?
And when Silverdale was nothing, we heard about Silverdale coming in, and they were all older than myself. But Carter said, I make more money messing with real estate 1 day a week than I do all 5 days
Really?
as a dentist. But he said if I wasn't a dentist, I couldn't mess with the real estate.
Wow.
So we were gonna buy a bunch of property where Silverdale Mall was. At that time, there was just a restaurant there, Elsie's and stuff, and they were older, and they said, well, we seen the government move in and move out too many times, but we didn't understand that they had the deep water here for testing submarines.
Okay.
And we all could have been multimillionaires if we would have acted on our instincts. But that's how that went.
What made you decide against buying the land over there?
Because they told me the government might be here one day and gone tomorrow.
Oh yeah, okay.
So there we'd been stuck with a bunch of land, and we didn't have the money to just sit there and hold it forever.
Yeah. So how many years later was it that it got developed into what it is now?
Oh, probably 10.
Wow.
Took off in 10 years, yeah.
Wow.
And it just, in 10 more years, in 10 years you could have still made money if you had a lot of money.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, it's like it is now.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing, but it was another learning experience.
Yeah.
But you know, not always. We had bad times with land too, and people like the Japanese had that idea, and then they bought in Hawaii, and they ended up not making it.
Interesting.
Because when I went to Maui, the Grand Wailea was owned by the Japanese,
Okay.
and they had to sell it at a discount price to somebody else. But that doesn't have much to do with logging.
No, that's all right though.
But I did visit a logging site on Maui, and the people came from Wisconsin, and they were cutting down this real hard redwood trees that they had there. And he said he had a hard time with the crew because guys that wanted to retire would buy a one-way ticket and come over and work for him for a while, and then have a bad back because the lumber was too heavy, and then they'd get on state industrial and didn't have to work anymore.
Maybe beach bums.
Beach bums, they were beach bums.
Wow. Isn't that something?
I can't think of the name of those trees, but I'll think of it in a little bit.
Huh. Well,
They had North Fork pine there, which was planted, but these were what you had to do when you used the wood after they dried it and stuff. You had to drill it with a drill to put a nail in it.
okay. Wow, it was that hard.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Wally, I appreciate you giving me a bit of your time. Mary Lou, thank you very much.
Well, it's nice being able to do that, and probably a lot of things I forgot or didn't. But there's a lot. Not only am I, there's a lot of people older than me in Quilcene yet. So
Yeah, that's true.
Too bad you didn't get to talk to Laura Mae Schaefer. She just turned 99 this year.
Oh, gee. Yeah.
Mike Schaefer is her son. He still lives down
Okay.
close to the shop. You could talk to Mike. He knows a lot.
Yeah, I'll give him a bell then.
Yeah,
All right.
tell him I sent you down.
I'll do that. Huh.
I tell him every time I see him, I prayed for you in church today along with me and your wife. And he said, well, I wasn't in church, but I did pray for you.
Oh.
That's true.
Oh, Mike.
And that's the end of the story.
And that's